how that gap feels. I mean, I work at restaurants where the difference between the pay between the back of the house and front of the house was huge.
It's waiting on fries. That you don't get it? What do you mean you don't get waiting on fries?
Hopefully the customer never hears waiting on fries, but all this time on the entree and it's perfectly executed and then you're like,
ready to go.
I forgot to fire the fries.
I just always use that when I forgot to put somebody's order in and I was like, hey, I'm just waiting on the fries. It's going to be 2 more minutes. Realistically, I come back 10 minutes with the food.
Exactly. They just know that their food's not there and the server said they're still waiting on fries.
I guess we're just waiting on fries.
Back again with episode 3. We've got Chef Jorge Pabon, the CDC of Manhatta Restaurant, the Chef de Cuisine of Manhatta Restaurant, second only to Chef Jason.
But first, into supporting the local scene of beers and ciders, Diner Brew Co. uses only New York State ingredients manufactured in Mount Vernon and sold at the tap room in New Rochelle. Ran by owners-operators, Diner Brew Co. is a completely independent brewery. Porters, sours, browns, champagne ciders, and lagers, Diner Brew Co. is as good as it gets.
Justin, don't you have an event coming up with Diner Brew Co.?
We do. Coming up January 30th. Chris is coming in with the crew from Diner Brew. We're going to have a 4-tap event. He's handpicking 4 of his specialty drafts. I don't know if he's going to do all beer, or 3 beers and a cider, or whatever, but he's going to pick it out. We're going to put it on a tap at Smokehouse. We're going to do an event together. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Did you get a new cider or beer for this week?
We did. He sent us his kettle sour, the peach sour.
Kettle sour. I don't think I've had that one yet. How was it?
Well, I had it when I, last week
when you went there,
dropped in there. I had a sample. It was delicious. And now we're pouring it for this week, so that's what Chris wants us to drink this week, and that's what we're pouring.
I like that system. Chris has good taste in beverages.
Listen, why fight what's working? If the guy brewing the beer wants you to drink that, drink it. If the guy cooking the food wants you to eat it, eat it.
So with all these good beers being poured too at your locations, how often are you dealing with maybe unruly guests that were liking the beers just a little bit too much?
That happens sometimes. That definitely happens sometimes. I was at a bar not too long ago. I guess it was last weekend. Me and Gloria were sitting down eating, and this guy who had been there all afternoon, it seemed, or it turned out, from like 4 o'clock till maybe 9 or 10 o'clock, just had a little bit too much to drink, and he was getting a little too friendly with people. I think he was relatively harmless for the majority of it, but there was one specific part of the conversation that we tuned into where he definitely asked the guy he was sitting next to, hey, do you have a gun? And the guy was like, no. And so then this guy goes, if you had a gun, I'd kill anybody for you. And I was like, okay, maybe you have had a little too much to drink. And it was shortly after that they cut off the guy. And
stuff got real fast.
Pretty friendly asked him to leave.
Unfortunately, like, sometimes that stuff gets real a little too fast. You don't even see it coming. It's like everybody's cool for a little while, and then you just have one sip too much, and then it's like crazy town.
Everything changes.
And there is definitely a threshold level where you could say, I just poured them one beer. What happened over that period of time?
Yeah.
When you're dealing with serving guests alcohol and you don't know what they've taken beforehand, it could be, pills. They could have had drinks ahead of time.
Yeah, you just don't even know where they've been. Maybe they were just having a couple of drinks before they got to your establishment.
And you try to gauge it as best you can when they come in, and they could look fine one moment, and the next moment they're laying on the floor. It's a whole crazy scene.
That's when stuff catches up to you. It catches up to you.
But there's, being in the bar side of the restaurant or bar scene, period, we do have to gauge where people are at, how much we're serving them. We have to pace them if they're trying to get ahead of themselves. Ideally, we want to let the party go for as long as possible because that's how we keep the register ringing, and we know that bodies bring bodies. So we want the real estate.
Well, that's the line, right? Because where are you gotta fight yourself somewhere. It's like you want people to have a couple of drinks, and you want your check averages to go up and how much everybody's spending, but you don't want it to get to a point where you're becoming a liability for yourself, and then you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
So you always have to kind of like walk that line of like seeing who could be, potentially a trouble spot in a restaurant, and kind of monitor where they're at and keeping control on that, and making sure everybody I'm managing the floor sometimes, and I'll watch, and everybody comes in all nice, and everything's good, and
then all of a sudden,
boom! You gotta hit your bartenders off real quick and say, hey, listen, I saw so and so over here doing this. Keep an eye out. Keep an eye on, see where they're at. Start putting some water in front of them, or something like that. But
or for them some French fries or something.
You want to stay on the clean side of of the intoxication level, because it's not good for it's not good for the house, it's not good for the person drinking, it's not good for the bartender, it's not good for the other guests.
Yeah.
You know, if
You don't want to be known
too
as the
far,
place where people get sloppy and things get uncomfortable.
yeah, you ruin the whole experience for everybody.
And importantly too, there's discretion based on environment. I think is the best way to phrase it.
Yeah.
And quickly, Noom, tell me what level or what sign is too intoxicated to be in Manhatta, right? Like,
What level or what sign is too intoxicated to be at Manhatta? I mean,
what's not acceptable, right?
being rowdy, being sloppy, like that's
Yeah,
not
being rowdy, I
acceptable.
understand.
But I mean, I've seen people get a little too happy at some parties sometimes, you know. People have a lot to drink sometimes.
Just what do you have
Just leave it
as
at
your
that.
level of like threshold where somebody's got to be kind of cut off and maybe
the,
sent
the
out?
first thing is the noise level, right?
That is
So that's
true.
like that's a big
If you
thing.
get
right?
perfect example, what was the guy's name? Tony?
Yeah, we had, we had. This is a while ago.
This is a long time ago.
we had
Long,
guest.
long time ago.
So we'll get, yeah. So noise level is the first thing, because you want, you want to maintain a certain sound level throughout the restaurant the whole night. And once one person kind of gets a little too tipsy, you'll notice their voice elevates, and then it starts to create a disturbance in the whole vibe. So that's the first thing you want to tip off. What Anoom is talking about is
The
this guy.
specific incidents, one of our coworkers walked out of the kitchen, and all of a sudden, without him saying a word, all you hear is, "What the fuck are you looking at?" Coming from this guy who was sitting at the end of the bar, seemingly to be enjoying himself, but all of a sudden he was enjoying himself a little too much.
And that came out of nowhere, because the gentleman
completely
that-
out of nowhere.
The gentleman he references was a regular at the restaurant for a long time, and would just have root beer and like a burger. Like, he would just come in and get a draft root beer and have a burger. He was a nice guy. He knew everybody's names.
Yep.
All the servers thought he was like a sweetheart. We never saw this coming. Then one day,
out of nowhere.
he found the Bronx Pale Ale. Sorry to shout out the Bronx. It's not your fault, but the Pale Ale, and he had one beer, and it just turned
Everything
into a
switched.
whole different
Everything switched.
a whole different guy.
And he's
So you have
yelling
to
at people
identify.
talking about eating squirrels and all sorts of just crazy nonsense after that.
So quickly after that incident, we had to tell him, like, listen. I had a conversation with him, actually.
You had a couple conversations with him, I
couple
remember, to
conversations.
try
I
to
said-
keep him from like losing his place.
Yeah, and I said, listen, obviously you can't handle drinking here. If you want to come in and you want to eat like you've been doing for a couple of years now,
Yeah.
you want to come in and have a burger and have a root beer, you're more than welcome. But I'm not going to serve you anymore, because I saw you drink one beer and, hilarity
Something
ensued, So,
and then this happened multiple times. So like you told him to walk home one night when he had his car in the parking lot. Then he came back and stole his car away from you, didn't he? Well, I mean,
Well,
not stole his car away from you, but
I mean, this was all part of the same transgression of events.
That
right?
was
It
that
all-
same night? Okay.
Yeah, it was all one time that led to his eventual banishment of the restaurant, right? And the only other incident was when he came in a disguise, because we told him that he wasn't allowed to drink anymore. So he came in like a disguise, as if we wouldn't notice, and that's the
Yeah.
night you're talking about. And I'm pretty sure he was already intoxicated at that point.
Oh,
And
yeah,
we
no,
quickly told him that he had to leave, and that's when I put him in a cab, actually.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know what you've been doing all day. I'm going to put you in a cab, and I'm going to take you home. And then, like, disguise after this,
It was
that
a
was the
fiasco.
last time we saw him at the restaurant, though. The thing is to identify, like, you have two different kinds of, like,
Yeah.
intoxicants, right? Like,
You have your bros.
you have your bros, which you got a bunch of guys. They're out for the day. Maybe they're having some drinks, or they're watching a game, and they're bouncing from bar to bar. They're generally harmless. Sometimes they can be like annoying, because you're like look at these bros. They're doing whatever, but order a bucket of beers, and they can get a little loud, but generally
Typically,
know
there's
their
nothing wrong with
yeah.
that.
They generally know their place. The other kind is for lack of a better word, the degenerate. Right?
The guy will sit at the end of the bar with his hat real low, not talking to nobody, just
Yeah.
like pounding beers.
The guy in the corner, and then those are the ones that you have to identify, because those are the ones that are going to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Because they, I don't want to make light of the situation, but they, if you're having one drink and it's flipping a switch to somewhere, where your entire personality is changing, you probably have like an issue with that. So like those are the guys you don't want to be frequenting the bar, because it doesn't make the environment a
Suitable
pleasant
for
one.
everybody.
Well, that goes into something else as well. I mean, for example, working in a high volume bar on a Friday, Saturday night, where I may have a line of 30 kids trying to get drinks at once. And I say kids almost literally to some extent, right? You start seeing like personality traits come out as the night evolves. And maybe these kids are trying to slam their power hour at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, while the drinks are still a little bit cheaper. And they're just taking double fists going down. And at some point they walk back up to the bar and they're kind of clearly intoxicated, but to the point where it's still kind of acceptable in a late night bar, not a threat at the moment. And sometimes these kids will walk up to the bar already with a full beer or a full mixed drink in their hand and just try to order a second one.
Yep.
Now, that's where I have to judge something. Is this the type of personality that is just ordering beers to order beers? Because I'm okay draining your bank account in that sense because you're not drinking them. You're just hoarding them, really. But then you have the other guy, and that guy's a little bit dangerous to have in the bar as far as an intoxicated guest goes because he's trying to actually chug these drinks, which that could actually be harmful. And I don't want to have to spend the rest of the night answering, police questions or anything like that the next day.
Or babysitting this guy, making sure he doesn't do anything silly.
And that's a best case scenario. You don't want him to go out and kill somebody or something like that. It's definitely a level of responsibility there. I mean, that when you get to the over intoxicated level, it's not a good thing for anybody. Like I said, for the crowd at the bar, for the bar itself, for the bartender, because if you're that, you're no longer getting a decent tip anymore.
You're lucky if
they pay the bill. So. It's just not a good situation. So it's important that your bartenders and your management and everybody's kind of keeping a good eye on the whole situation and keeping the vibe the way you want it to be the whole entire night.
Absolutely.
100%. And some years back, and we won't necessarily say any names. However, a firefighter rolled into a bar, and he rolled into multiple bars that night, unbeknownst to us. And he wound up coming in and having a drink at the bar. He was kind of okay at that moment. Yeah, it was a regular amount of drinks he probably had. It was okay. There's a guy that works for the community as well, not looking too banged up at that moment. And he actually wound up driving down the wrong way of a road and killing somebody.
I remember that story.
And that's a sad story in itself, but he wound up frequenting every single bar that night, and I think they did check his system eventually, and he had a little bit of a concoction of various things in his system as well. But, we can't always tell all the time what's going on from 1 second to the next second. I mean, all it takes is a quick trip to the bathroom from somebody and then having a chemical reaction with whatever they've taken in the bathroom to come back out, and all of a sudden it's night and day difference.
Yep. So it's important for people to be on their game and just be paying attention to people's attitudes and personalities and the way they're acting and reacting to things.
Yeah, I think in a lot of restaurants too, you'll see a yellow light kind of happen if you're looking at a green light, red light scale, where you alert your team members, hey, this guy seems like, I shouldn't just say guy, this guy or girl seems like they're looking to have a little bit too much fun today. Maybe we should slow them down. I'm kind of yellow laying them, right?
Yeah.
Before you actually give them the full-on cutoff. And then another aspect of that is when you do cut somebody off, how do you finesse that not to have them never come back again and have a nasty taste in their mouth?
And not to have them react negatively at you, publicly and openly.
That's the really tough part to do, because
if you're at the point where you have to cut them off, there's a chance that they're not going to like it.
That's why you kind of want to stay ahead of it, because when you're ahead of it, you're still talking to someone who's relatively coherent in their thoughts. If you let it go too far, at that point, then you're already in trouble, because that person's clearly not thinking correctly anymore.
Completely. And one of the tactics that I'll use often is I will turn to the friend that is a little bit more coherent and make hard eye contact with them as I'm explaining why I have to cut his friend off a little bit. And use this in a finessing way as well, of course. I'm not just saying, hey, I'm not serving you, you're drunk. I'm saying, hey, guys, listen, this is a corporate spot, or, hey, this is more of a family-friendly environment. I can't let you get any real further. I'm trying to slow you down a little bit. Let me back you with the water. You're cool to hang out here. You're not really causing much of a scene now that you're knowledgeable about this, right? However, if you want to keep on partying, this isn't the bar for that. Go across the street. That bar loves shenanigans.
Just unload him on the guy across the street.
Pass him to somebody else. But I mean, you touched at a good thing. Like I like going to the friend or diffusing the whole situation, because when you really get in trouble is when you're blunt about it.
Totally.
You don't want to embarrass somebody. So if they're
Exactly.
if they're with people, you know that you don't want to embarrass them. Be like, dude, you can't drink anymore. And then that you're just throwing gas on the fire, because usually their friends will be like, oh, look at you, you're oh, you're always getting whatever. And then it just builds and builds and builds. And then that guy is gonna be, or girl, that guy or girl is gonna be like,
You guys are so
upset,
positive.
and he's gonna be. He's going to be more inclined to argue the situation. If you just pull him off to the side and be like, listen, dude, don't order
take it
anymore. I'm not going to do it in front of your whole thing, but we're going to have to slow down, and I'm not going to announce it to everybody, but you're going to help me help you kind of deal.
It's true. And another test that we do too is, if somebody orders a drink from you and you realize that they're to the point of about to be intoxication or so, they might be able to take that extra drink, and it's still kind of okay depending on where you are. I'll not make that drink, and I'll wait to see if they ask me again.
Yep.
Because a lot of times if somebody is a little bit hammer time, they forget that they ordered the drink, and they're just hanging out, sitting around. They don't realize that
And then
their
before
drink
you
hasn't
know
shown.
it, someone's already taken him out the door.
Or they take themselves out the door because they're like, you know what, maybe I should just go home instead. Or just go to a next bar where, somebody wants to
Where I'll
serve
get
me.
my drinks faster.
Which may not be the case. When I see people come in that have clearly been partying all day, I see if I could do a one-and-done job on them just to take $50 into the till, if it's worthwhile, of course.
Don't offer the tab,
for
right?
one-
For a
that's-
round. I'm
that's a
saying
good
if they
play.
come in with
That's
a
a
round.
good play. Is don't even offer the tab. Just be like,
Yep.
$30.
In and out, and I'll gauge from that point, back him with the water if need be, and,
You said him again. Back him with the water.
He's drawing
Hit
on
him with the water.
very specific personal stories. In
You know
his
what?
mind.
It's okay though, because it is usually dudes.
I mean, if we're
I'm just gonna
realistic,
throw
it
that
usually
down
is.
there.
Yeah.
We just had to cut a group of girls off the other day. I think women are, I'm sorry to say this, women are the worst when it comes to having to get cut off.
You're
because
gonna get in trouble now.
There's so much more, I feel like, that can happen with women drunk than men drunk. I think that there's a lot more problems that ensue. Who's getting her home safely, right? We live in a predatory.
I'm
I
sorry.
understand
I'm
what you're
sorry.
saying, but
Dudes are crash and burn though, and I mean you're behind the bar. Have you ever been behind the bar with a female bartender?
Yes, and that's a whole nother issue that you could touch on.
I mean, have you heard the things that dudes will say to these female bartenders? It's like they have never seen a woman before in their life, and they just open up a present and they have a woman, and they're like, "Oh, what do I say? What do I say?" And then
What do you think are some of the funniest things that some people have said to some of your bartenders?
Actually, the funniest thing I'll notice is not even what people say; it's what they don't say. So you have a guy, right? And I'm saying guy now because it's a guy, right? And he's sitting at the bar, and he'll sit at the bar and he'll have 2 or 3 drinks, and he'll order a burger, say nothing to the bartender at all, right? Nothing at all, and then get his bill and then write something on the bill like, "Hey, great time. Give me a call. We can continue this."
Nice tits. See you next week. It could be ridiculous, and
We've also definitely had a couple of guys who'll come into the restaurant and, like you just said, order a burger or a soda or something like that, and then leave the server or the bartender $100 tip or something like that. There's definitely been guys who
Or
do
just
that.
randomly
Yeah.
with no note at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without saying anything, it's just here's the $100.
And then you
Thanks
wonder
for-
what does that even mean? What do they?
it's thanks for interacting with me.
I'm
on
telling
a
you,
very
man,
basic level.
dudes are the worst.
as far as the bar goes, though, we sell sex, and if you deny
Wait,
that,
hold on,
you should
hold
not be.
Hold on, stop.
No.
Just stop. I'm hitting the brakes so hard on that
Just
comment.
everybody needs to know that was Jay who said that.
That was
not
Jay.
Justin,
Jay is
not
over there
Anu,
selling
not
sex.
Jorge.
All right,
That was Jay.
we don't sell. I don't. What are you talking about?
Disclaimer: we don't sell physical sex. We sell sex appeal.
No, we don't sell any of that. We sell food and we sell quality cocktails and we sell an experience.
But that's the
I don't know
difference.
what you're
Jay
working
is
at.
selling very different experiences over.
But that's the difference between working in a restaurant and working in nightlife.
That's the difference
It's a
between working at
completely-
your restaurant and working at everybody else's restaurant.
Exactly, and that's what you have to understand.
How'd you get a
Because
job
we're in
there?
it to make tips.
If you're over
we're
here
not-
selling sex appeal, what are you doing there?
if we're not making the $50 an hour, we're not
He's not
happy
making the
about it.
$50
So how do you think we get to that point, right? Girls' job is to flirt with the guys or entertain it, depending on what the level is.
This is taking a wildly inappropriate turn at this point.
You know, guys, we come from different backgrounds and different places.
Very different places.
Have you ever
do you
been
want me to
that
say?
guy that's actually sending the notes to the bartender?
I feel like you might.
No,
have.
never. But we watch it happen all day long. The girls take it, they throw it behind their register, they smile, they lift the $30 to $50 off the client, and they throw it in their tip
Well,
bucket.
I mean,
and that's it.
The client. See, now he's using words like clients. Like,
How do you train people again?
And this is the difference between working in a restaurant and working in a bar.
oh man. I mean, yeah, okay. We have a professional bartender. They know how to handle it, but that doesn't make it any better.
It's part of the territory. It's part of the territory. I've worked with girls where they go, this guy leaves me creepy notes all the time.
What
And I'm
about
like,
the-
let me see the creepy note. And I look at the
Let
note.
me see the creepy
I
note.
look at the note.
He's like, how
and-
do I need to write my next note?
I look at the note and it's like a stick figure of like a devil, and then it says you're beautiful on the side, and I'm like, on a creepy level 1 to 10, that's like a 3.
I mean, it could be. I think it ratchets up to like a 7 if it's a devil. Like, if it's just a stick figure, that's
I think
like
it
a
depends
3.
on the quality.
But
of
if you put
drawing
like
of
the
devil.
horns on there, then you're talking about 7 or 8. All right, how about the guy that creepily finds their like Instagram or something though, and like slides in their DMs the next day?
while or even worse, while he's sitting at the bar.
Like sitting at the bar, you're just sitting there and just like, I'm gonna find your Instagram. I'm not gonna say anything to you right now. Oh, there you are on Instagram. I'm gonna slide in your DM when I get home tonight.
That's
Like,
very passive of that guy as well.
This is
too.
what dudes do.
I get it. I get dudes do weird things. We
Dudes
we
do
see
weird
it.
things.
I mean, I wonder if I like to feel like when I was younger, I had some sort of game. You know,
You were forced to have some sort of game.
No,
when you were
my
younger,
wife will
'cause, like,
disagree because she'll say you have no game, dude. Your lines were terrible. But at least I had lines.
You had lines, yeah.
But you know, like today, it's like dudes are crashing and burning left.
You don't
and
need
right.
to make any effort. You don't need to make any effort nowadays.
Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have Jorge Pabon in the studio today.
So Jorge is the chef de cuisine at Manhatta, my direct supervisor. But before we get into his roles at Manhatta, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
I went to college. I studied philosophy, I studied economics, then I graduated. And then I decided to go to culinary school. I always liked cooking, so started researching culinary schools, decided to go for it.
And you went to Institute of Culinary Education?
Yeah, I went
ICE?
to ICE, Institute of Culinary Education.
Shout out to ICE, that's where I went.
Yeah.
2014.
Yeah. And then after that, just did my externship in the city, New York City. After that, I decided I was done with the city and started traveling and moving around. I worked in Europe, worked in California, came back to the city, left the city again, went back to Europe.
Where did you work in Europe?
I work in Italy. I lived there for a little bit over a year. I also work in Spain. And then I came back to the city, and now I'm in Manhattan.
So is there, for me, it sounds like there's a huge difference between working in the city versus outside of the city. And in the city that we refer to as New York City,
Yeah.
I assume the volume is much higher in the city versus coming out to maybe like Westchester, directly outside the city by 20 minutes, where the volume falls off drastically. Is it easier to cook outside of the city than it is pressure-wise?
I think it's more fun to cook outside the city. I think my experiences cooking at restaurants outside New York City have been more about the cuisine, about the location, the ingredients. It seems a lot more intimate. It allows me to pursue, that art of cooking. In the city is super competitive. Keeping the business going, keeping the business healthy, coming up with menus, finding purveyors for the ingredients. It's a lot more competitive. Yeah.
I think speaking about competitiveness, it's very evident in the city how competitive things are and how quickly things change. One good example of that is the discussions that we have on the line and the discussions that you guys as sous chefs have on the line relating to new dishes. Just last night specifically, I heard you guys talking about how we wanted to change the burger from the lamb burger to something else, but keep the same lamb flavors present and just create a new lamb dish. And that was something on the fly, something that you guys just came up with on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those changes. There's many factors that lead to many changes. Maybe a purveyor can't provide us anymore with an ingredient, so we have to start thinking about a new dish. Maybe the owners of the restaurant have a different vision of what the menu should look like. So then that
and that also changes seasonally. Like,
exactly.
For example, our chicken dish over the summer, we used like a pepper hot sauce. As soon as the peppers went out of season, it was time to change that dish.
Yeah, so that's something that we try to keep in Manhatta, work with the seasons. I think that's something we do very well. We change the menu with the seasons. We rely a lot on the markets. But then, a lot of the menu changes have also to do with what the owners want, or maybe what the executive chef wants, or maybe what the guest wants. We pay a very close attention to guest reviews, and that reflects on our menu.
So since we're talking a little bit more specifically about Manhatta right now, why don't you tell us about your role specifically as Chef de Cuisine of Manhatta?
Can we paint the picture of Manhatta real quick first for those that are unfamiliar with the brand and the actual restaurant location and kind of how it's set up? I know most people go into a restaurant, they order food, and it just comes out of thin air, out of nowhere from the back. Manhatta's a little bit differently from my understanding, and maybe you can elaborate on how that setup is.
Yeah, so at Manhatta, when you come in for dinner, our kitchen is in the middle of the dining room, so you have a choice to sit either at a table or you can sit at the kitchen counter and watch us work. Once you're in the dining room, you order from a 3-course prefix menu, so you get a first course, an entree, and a dessert. You have a few options for each from each category. I think that's a good basic description.
Completely visible.
Yeah.
And I know you were saying, Jorge, that the menu changes somewhat frequently. How often is the menu actually changing?
I would say every 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
There's some major changes on the menu, yeah.
Oh, that's quite often, I think.
Yeah.
Huh? Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of creative freedom then, kind of.
Yeah, I think all of us in the management team have a lot of creative freedom, a lot of input on the menu. Even I always try to also extend that to the cooks. Whenever they have an idea for a dish or whatever vision they have, they're welcome to bring that to us and help us create a menu. Yeah.
Sure. And you were saying, Noon, before I interjected real quick, you were going to touch on.
Oh, so my position is tournant. So as a tournant, I'm sort of overseeing my team of line cooks, or the team of line cooks that I work with. Pre-service, just to make sure that everybody's ready to go for service and all their stations are set up properly and stocked properly. During service, I am at the pass plating and, again, just trying to ensure a smooth service.
Spoonwork.
Spoonwork and tweezers. That's what we do. I mean, not to knock it down like that a little bit. We make jokes about it, or we used to make jokes about it at Smokehouse, but that's life now. So while I'm doing my plating work at the pass and supervising our chef de parties, our line cooks, Jorge is supervising me and also just generally ensuring that service runs smooth from the kitchen side of things.
So then, now, what you do as CDC, really explain the role of CDC to those that don't know. I didn't know. I had to look this up a little bit as I'm in the front of house.
They were both convinced that CDC stood for Center for Disease Control. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. That's exactly what we do.
Yeah. CDC is chef de cuisine of the kitchen. The title is mostly based on a traditional French brigade system, the hierarchy.
Very military-like in the kitchen.
Yes,
huh?
Yeah.
yes. So here in Manhatta, specifically, as the chef de cuisine of the restaurant, I would say on the culinary side, I am the second in command. Above me, we have Chef Jason, who's the executive chef.
Jason is the guy.
Yeah. So basically, my role is to work one-on-one with him, and and to help him manage and run the restaurant, create menus, hire, and like Anum said, just make sure that service runs smoothly.
Not to make any jokes too, but if the number one in command goes down for any reason, has to leave the restaurant, that puts the number two to the number one spot, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
He's for sure the guy who's making sure that Chef Jason's vision is getting executed properly on a day-to-day basis.
I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Basically, my role is to execute the executive chef's vision. Yeah. Whenever he's not in the restaurant for whatever reason, he has a day off, or he's at an off-site event, or one of those reasons, then yes, I'm the one responsible for for everyone. Yeah.
So that's really, you must see very close eye to eye with chef at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, our relationship is we meet every day, we check in, we go over
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
So much. Yeah.
That's how the scallop conversation started last night, over Jason looking at some plates and noticing that we had some plates that were going missing and some plates that were just not being utilized properly.
Yeah.
What do you mean missing?
Most likely they were being broken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like physical plates.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and they're expensive plates, and so he was not too happy about them going missing.
When we talk about the culinary trends and things that you see in the kitchen, what's one of the biggest culinary trends that we're looking at kind of right now, where maybe some guys are overdoing it? You could walk into any restaurant and find the same thing over and over again, where they're not even trying to push the boundaries anymore.
I don't know. I think there's many of those trends. I would say a tasty menu is a trend. I think having a chef's counter these days seems like
that's definitely very trendy.
True.
I think here in Manhatta we try to produce something that's a little bit more authentic. We don't really follow these trends. We just cook food. That's it.
Cook good food. That's rule number one.
Are there any trends right now that you're looking at, or you look at and you're like, this is silly? I don't know why people are.
I would say, I don't know. Nothing comes really to me right now. Well, I would say probably plating styles. Those are things that, like, I look on Instagram and they're like plating food in a certain way that just seems like very trendy. I don't know.
That would be what you call spoon work, Justin.
The spoon work.
Yeah. Fancy spoon work is definitely kind
like
of trendy.
Spirals,
right now.
or like this
Yes.
technique where you, I don't know, put a puree on the plate and then
And then just splatter it.
splatter
you
it,
yeah.
like things like that.
Is there something that you see coming up that could be the future trend, steering away from those things that we're seeing all the time? I mean, we open up Instagram, and we talked about it a little bit last week. When you open up Instagram, you see these same plating techniques that you're speaking of, with all the puree and the spirals all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's only a matter of time before people go, all these plates look exactly the same. We have to start doing something different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I think going back to that idea of something that just looks authentic, organic, just not adding too much to it, I guess.
So now we know a little bit about what your specific role is. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to what a day in the life of Chef Jorge is like? From the moment you walk into the building first, what's typically the first thing that someone's going to come to you with?
Yeah, give us that Goodfellas shot. Like one shot from the street all the way to the table.
So it's a very long day, first of all.
What time do you typically get in? Because you're there before I am.
Yeah, I'm usually there around, I would say 11. 11. I wake up fairly early. I go to the gym, and then I go to the restaurant.
Wait, let's tell everybody what kind of gym you go to, because this is kind of interesting.
Mixed martial arts.
Nice.
My man just
nice.
started doing MMA.
Yeah. So yeah,
As if cooking wasn't enough, he goes out there and starts fighting people.
so I do a little bit of that, and then I go into the restaurant.
I could see where you can need to do that though.
That's
From, like,
exactly
cooking all night, and I
the
just
first
want,
time you told me about that, I was like,
this.
this makes sense. This is the perfect outlet for all that aggression that we build up
Yeah.
during the day.
I choke someone, make them tap. Yeah, so basically, I walk into the building, and I immediately check in with the sous chefs that open the restaurant. Make sure that all the staff members are there. I go over the menus. That's a big one. Make sure that all the ingredients arrive. Everything that I ordered the night before arrive. And then I always have a long list of things that I have to do on that day that I try to write the night before. That is maybe interviews that I have to conduct that day, or emails that I have to write, or I'm working on a menu. Like right now, we're working on the Valentine's menu.
It's a good month ahead to get things
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, so we know what the menu looks like. We start post the menu online. Start placing orders. Start testing the dishes if we've never done those dishes.
And so our Valentine's menu, I think last year it ran for almost a week. It wasn't just the
Yeah.
day of. It was a few days before and a few days afterwards.
Yeah, this time it's just gonna be the one day, the Valentine's Day.
Mm.
And then just looking at the schedule and looking at the teams, we have like 4 or 5 teams right now. An events team, we have the dinner service team, lunch team, we have the prep team, and then just we're expanding a little bit as of now.
Mm.
So just building those teams.
And all of this is done before you even step into the kitchen and start looking at food.
Yeah. So this is all before service starts, obviously, and then I spend my nights running the pass during dinner. Yeah.
That's a lot of bodies and overhead too. It sounds like you've got a football team there ready to go.
So many
offensive
people.
and
It's
defensive.
at least it's 40 cooks.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then we have the management team, which is pretty big as well.
Now we were talking just a little bit earlier on this, and we'll get into it a little bit more later on in the episode here. But this tax that's been being put onto checks to cover some kitchen expenses as well. Just what was this 3% that we're starting to see pop up in various receipts?
I don't want to call it a tax, but you're referring to like a revenue sharing like kind of deal where a new charge is being put on the bill to cover, the guys in the kitchen who often get shorted on the gratuity scale from the servers.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a wage gap between the front of house workers and the back house workers, and it's not such a hard argument sometimes to say that back house workers maybe put in more hours or more effort over the course of the day, but those efforts aren't necessarily always reflected in their
Monetary
pay.
scale.
Yeah. And so having a gratuity included or hospitality included or a revenue share program kind of closes that gap a little bit. And that's one of the things that we do at Manhatta. That was one of the reasons why I was eager to join the team, just to be a part of a place that was looking or actively looking and trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly know from experience how it feels to how that gap feels. I mean, I work at restaurants where the difference between the pay between the back of the house and front of the house was huge.
Yeah.
But I like what we're doing at Manhatta. We're definitely trying to close that gap. And the more the restaurant, the bigger the restaurant gets and the healthy the business is, the better.
Everybody does.
Yeah, everybody does.
So to go into it briefly, what we do at Manhatta, there's a percentage that comes off of the revenue that the restaurant makes that gets divvied up between the employees, and that percentage is also divided based on the position of the employee, their position in the restaurant, and their position their level within that position.
Yeah.
So for a line cook, there's 3 levels or 3 tiers worth of revenue share that you could be making, and I think that's same 3 tiers based on all of the positions within the restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you have a base salary, hourly salary, and then a percentage of the revenue sales of the restaurant. It's given to you depending on what station or what position you have, and then as you grow in the restaurant, then your salary increases.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you see that, like, because the guys in the kitchen are getting a little more share of the pie? You see them like taking a little more like ownership over like a dish, or being a little more careful, or
I mean, yeah, certainly. I definitely encourage them to want more. I'm definitely I definitely try to work one-on-one with all of my cooks to encourage them to push for more, because as they grow, they'll get paid more.
Right.
So I always make sure that I know where they all want to end up. Someone wants to be a sous chef, someone wants to work the meat station, and I work closely with them to get them to that position, because obviously they'll learn more, and obviously they'll just get paid more as well.
Do you think that, because we speak a lot about the crazy like differences in viewpoint between the back of house and the front of house, right? Like you have like the black and white as the back of house. You walk in, it's like this or that, and you need a question. Yeah. You get to the front of house, and there's all kinds of drama and stories, and like, you know, but this guy needs this, and all of a sudden,
like all the stories that the servers come up to at the pass. It's like just
all of a sudden there's like this gray, right? And then you come in the back, and you're just like, I just need to know what you need from my life right now, and then I need you to go back to the front, right? And sometimes I think it's lost, because obviously there's viewpoints for a reason. Like the front of house is a different animal than the back of house is, and when you're stuck in the back all the time, maybe you don't see everything out that the front's doing, and vice versa. Like the front's in the front all the time, and they don't see everything the back's doing. When you have like a revenue sharing, and you understand like it's not just about, I'm gonna, whatever your responsibility is, to dumb it down, I'm gonna cook what I have to cook, I'm going to put on a plate, I'm going to send it out to the front, and I don't care what happens after that, because I'm done. When you're in a revenue sharing program, now I think, does that make people care what happens after the plate leaves? Because you understand that the front of house is going to affect your bottom line as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want everybody to be as well informed and just ready to deliver the proper product that we're trying to give, so your money doesn't get affected, basically. And the way we have this nice little revenue share calculator that gets emailed to us, so we can see how much we're making in terms of the revenue share on a week-to-week basis, but you can also kind of get an idea of what the other positions are making too. Like, you don't know all of their exact information, but you can like see the numbers and say like, all right, our servers are making this percentage, we're making this percentage, let's make sure that they're doing their job properly, not to get on their case or anything, but let's make sure they have all the information they need to do their job properly, so we all win at the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, the fact that we have an open kitchen. Yeah. It feels that we are out there as well, and we see the food, how it gets presented to the table,
how it's received at the table.
So it feels like we're like constantly we're part of the entire process. Yeah. So even though we're in the back of the house, we're in the kitchen cooking. And also for the front of the house, they see us work every night. They see what it takes for us to...
And I think that's helpful for them, because then they're able to go and relay that to the tables a little bit better, because they're actually watching it go down themselves.
Yeah,
I do like the term heart of the house. A lot of times you hear that maybe referring to the back of the house, just because it is like the bloodline. You can't do anything without the back of the house. Yeah. But in Manhatta, from what you said a little bit earlier, the back house is actually the center of the house.
It's in the front of the house.
Which led me to think about that heart of the house.
That's kind of cool. I like that. But yeah, once service starts, we're no longer back of the house. We're front of the house at that point.
Yeah, and we're a big part of what happens at the tables. Servers are always approaching the past and discussing, the guests' preferences or menu alterations, and then it's they're always having that conversation with us. So it's almost as if we're speaking with the guests. So I think having an open kitchen and being a revenue share restaurant gives the back of the house at Manhatta a lot of a lot of power or presence.
The rest of this interview with Jorge Pabon will be uploaded separately. Hit the subscribe or follow button so your streaming service will notify you of new uploads or interviews of shows in the future.
Right about now, Waiting on Fries Court is in full effect. Judge J residing in the case of Waiting on Fries against the Yelp Reviewers of America. Prosecuting attorneys are Anu Bandel and Justin Zato. Order!
And this week on Restaurant Takedowns.
I'm just going to go ahead and start reading it because then we'll get into it. All right. I want to state that I drove nearly 40 miles to get to Tarrytown for this restaurant. I went here maybe a year ago, and I remember it was delicious. When I went here this past Sunday at about 4:30, they weren't open yet. Some of the lights were on, staff inside, the chairs still on tables, and a guy was riding around on his hoverboard inside. Okay, they're not open till 5, no problem. I'll wait even though I was hungry. I noticed 2 other people tried to get inside as well, but no luck for them either. A little after 5, tried again. This time the guy signaled that they were closed. What? There was no sign on the door. There was nothing on their website stating that they would be closed. What a waste of my time and gas.
Where can I go to find Marty McFly on his hoverboard, please?
I think they have hoverboards now.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Wait, actual real hover
So, I mean, this is a solid review if you think the place is going to be open and then it's just closed. But, so I would wonder what happened. The owner of the restaurant responded, and I'm going to just throw this in there. This is a perfect response to a Yelp review. This is the way to handle it. Unlike, our other friend,
which we were discussing in the first episode.
Right, in episode 1. Watch me win. The owner responds, I have to say, I'm completely horrified to hear about your experience, but at the same time, some stuff just doesn't make any sense at all. We're open for brunch and dinner on Sunday, so surely the chairs wouldn't be up, and we might even have some lingering guests from the late afternoon. We always invite early guests to start at the bar while the kitchen finishes the changeover. Also, we're in Dobbs Ferry, not Tarrytown. I really, really hope that maybe you've mistaken us because I assure you we do not have any hoverboards around here.
That is the most perfect response, and that's a very regimented response. Probably not exactly what he wanted to say.
Right.
But he did a good job of keeping himself very restrained.
Kept his composure while respond to something that clearly was incorrect.
Exactly.
So here's what I'm just going to interject, and I've seen this happen a bunch of times, including to our own restaurant. If you're going to go on Yelp and decide, I want to take someone down because my experience was terrible, I question your morals just for that
First
alone.
of all, yeah.
Because, just take it up with them. But let's make sure you get the right restaurant. If you're going to go on and just write a bad review and take down someone's Yelp review, these things count. Some people are going to read it and think that this actually happened, and they're going to question, their visit to that restaurant. And we work hard at the restaurant to get you to come in the door. Absolutely. So if you're writing a poor Yelp review, 1, I hope you brought it up with me first, if you had a problem. 2, please make sure it's my restaurant.
Right.
Yeah. Let's get it right. And that's happened to me before. There's another restaurant with a similar name in town, and they wrote a review and just knocking out all the stuff that I've never made before in my life. So I know that it happened. So I mean, that's people's got you got to pay attention to what you're doing.
Without getting too deep into the story, there was also the one time a journalist contacted our restaurant thinking it was another restaurant due to some health.
Yeah, it's a health stand. I mean, that's a whole nother
story,
issue.
But that's even worse. A quick Google search would have solved that problem.
Can the owner get that bad review taken down, or
for the low price of $99, that review can be eliminated by Yelp?
Yeah, unfortunately, Yelp doesn't take any reviews down. It's like their
all they can do is just reply.
All they can do is reply like that, which he handled, which I think he handled really well. Because in the back of my head, I can be like, this son of a bitch wrote this review, and I would just want to why are you writing this? Is the wrong restaurant. But I think he handled it nice. He sympathized with her experience.
Yep.
To put himself on the same side as the customer,
and very clearly said this wasn't us.
Yeah, this wasn't us.
Can the client go back and change, or the customer go back and change? I know I'm in graphic design mode. Here's my invoices.
Graphic
can
design mode.
the guest
go back and change
The
their
guest
star
can
review.
delete it. Yeah, the guest can delete it
But
for
they
sure.
they didn't do that.
They never
left
do.
it there.
They never do.
Because they
Once-
only
'cause
log
they're
on
embarrassed.
to do the takedown, and then they don't log back on until there's another takedown at hand, right?
Probably.
Something like that.
Ideally, I would like to see more positive Yelp reviews.
I'm not a Yelper myself, so
I'm not, but it's the only way to combat it, is it, right? Or do you just look at Google reviews instead?
you mentioned a review in the interview, right? Do you use Yelp reviews or different reviews?
We read the reviews and just to assess the overall experience of the guest. Yeah.
So like Yelp reviews and also comment cards. Each guest will get a little
Oh yeah,
card
that's
that they can
much
fill
better
out
because then you have
at
it
the end of
in
the month.
house and you can address it
Yeah.
at least you know from time.
And I feel like there's someone who's paying attention to like reviews online on a nightly basis, right? Isn't that one of the sous chef's responsibilities?
Yeah.
To like
yeah,
see
one
them
of
and
the-
respond to
yeah.
them.
Clearly, you can't use Yelp because you're not even sure if they have the right restaurant.
I could see somebody reviewing Manhatta and being like, "This place is so dirty. The Statue of Liberty is filthy. The train lines are disgusting." And then you realize they meant to write about Manhattan, period. Dangerous naming of a restaurant.
I saw rats on the train track. Is a train going through the
There's a train
restaurant?
track in the restaurant? We
Lot
gotta
of
check this place out.
confusion here. Do better with your Yelps. Do better. Make sure you're reviewing the right places.
And with that, let's check our voicemails.
Hey, you've reached Waiting on Fries. Send us your voicemail.
You have one new message.
So first of all, I wanted to say that I really, really liked your podcast. I listened to the second episode this morning on my way into work, and I wanted to get your opinion on tipping. This kind of got brought up a couple of different times throughout the years about, pooling tips or, just servers getting the tips from their own tables. And I recently actually went in to visit a Noom at Manhatta, and they don't do tipping. It's kind of like this thing where everybody in the restaurant is one team, and they, I guess, kind of share those, I guess not tips because they're not getting tips, but, it's kind of included in their salary hourly rate. So I kind of figure everybody may have a different opinion about this because, Justin kind of being like front of house, Jay being front of house as well, and then Anum kind of being back of house. The opinions might differ there, and I guess I was interested in seeing like where you guys were at with that, and I guess just about the restaurant industry in general and like how that whole concept of tipping and gratuity is changing.
So, all right, that's a good question. We do go back and forth a lot about tipping and tip pooling and how you share tips, and obviously we do have some different perspectives. My whole thing is I actually think from the house perspective, as running the whole restaurant, I think I would prefer the tip pooling thing. Like I see more advantages from pooling tips.
You're talking
versus, well, let's just say
having a policy where you can tip and all the servers pooling.
Yeah. So before we get into the hospitality included versus not setups, if you want to say like whether you have a tip pooling scenario versus everybody keeps their own thing, I think that the tip pooling thing is gonna work out better for the restaurant itself because then you're forcing that team aspect a little bit better than like everybody out for themselves. And there's definitely like pushback either way because if you go to a staff that's already keeps their own tips and you tell them we're thinking about going to pool tips, they immediately start saying, oh, well, what if so and so doesn't do this, or what if so and so doesn't do that, but I do all the work over here and I do all or what if she screws up and then
why does it have to be
she or he screws up and then my tips go down. What they're looking at is like the immediate response, right? Because sure, you're gonna go from everybody keeps their own, and you switch to pooling tips. Immediately, you're gonna have that growing pain in that because you're gonna identify real quick who's not
contributing,
and who is. But I think eventually that kind of flattens out, and you figure out, and you get a team that's gonna work better.
And that's one perspective of it too. And on the other side of it, I look at the 80-20 rule where it's 20% of the people in the restaurant are the ones that are really there living to do all the work to get things done and really are your grade A employees and staff that are very knowledgeable and really know this business inside and out. And for somebody that is one of those grade A employees,
do they want to have to carry some of the 80%? Like, it's tough. It's really tough to deal with, I think.
And I don't think that they want to.
I'm sure in the beginning nobody's going to want to.
No one's going to want to. But I think eventually,
like the quality of the work will improve, and everybody will start feeling that they're putting in the same share of work or the same amount of
and
effort.
you're either going to get on board or we're going to realize that, some turnover is needed. Or you could take it one step further where the whole house really shares something, and that's the trends that we're seeing. Like we spoke with Chef earlier, where everybody's kind of involved in that revenue sharing, and then that really creates like a team thing. It's just grasping an idea of where when you've been running one system for so long, making that jump, not just to tip pooling, to just being like, this is the new system altogether. That's a lot of training to go through staff, through your fan base, through everybody that you're going to speak to. So it gets tricky. But eventually, I see that not being just a trend, but eventually like where we're going. Because it does even the gap, like we said. You just said 80-20. I'll take it a step further. The kitchen is a little more consistent than the front of house. Like they're there all the time. Daytime, nighttime, they're producing the food. Like they're the one putting in the effort, and the gap between the front of house to the back house is, way larger inversely to the amount of time put in to the effort, right? Sure. So it's swung way far the other way. So I think if you get into revenue sharing where the kitchen actually gets part of that, then you're bringing everybody together, and you see, like, as you guys were speaking to earlier, everybody's working together.
Sure, and this is something that's been popping up more and more, and I see it in the cocktail or server forums on Facebook or the groups where people are posting about this 3% service charge that's now being added on to the bills, and they're now having a complaint in themselves, though, saying that it's taking from their percentage of tip because the person goes, well, there's already 3% included, which I saw some posts saying that it's even 5% in some places. And where they say, oh, it's already included, they feel like they're getting less of a tip percentage on the bill because people go, they've already forced a mandatory 3% on me.
I think that's where you got to be careful of how you present it to your guests, right? I mean, they're sitting there and they look at it, like, from what I understand, because of the way that the regulations are, you can't necessarily receive gratuity for the kitchen for whatever reason. So you have to present it on the bill a certain way, like it doesn't look like gratuity.
Doesn't list it as a gratuity.
Yeah, and I think just everybody being educated on what it is. So if someone asks, what is this charge, you can appropriately explain or communicate to the guest what it is. That kind of will take away that percentage. I think you're losing it when, that 2% charge extra is a very small-minded way of looking at the big picture. You're like, I'm worried about, losing 2% on this check, where if we're all working together, we can go way above that 2% charge. Like, you should just be doing a better job, do better, and you're not going to worry about 2%, like, don't worry about the 2% you're losing on your check. Just like do whatever you have to do to make their experience better.
Exactly.
And is that a floodgate though, where it starts at 2%, then it's 3%, all of a sudden it's 5%? Like, where do you cap things?
I think you have to identify what's correct. Like, I mean, it's only gonna be a floodgate if you incorrectly come up with a number. Like, you can't just make it an arbitrary number and say, we're just going to start collecting 3% for the back house. I think if you're going to make that decision, it shouldn't be a decision you make like overnight. You should look into it, look at your revenue centers, look at the distribution, look where it's going, figure out what your averages are for the week, figure out what number is going to translate to something that makes it worth it. Because the last thing you want to do is, I say all the time that if we give raises to people, I actually don't like giving raises, like especially to servers, right? Because servers make hourly wise, they make the least. But when you include their tips, they make the most. Some of them don't even realize that they make the most. They make them like $35 an hour, and they're like,
the worst thing is someone who makes the most and then comes into the kitchen and starts complaining about it, about making so much more money, but they're not making enough money, and they're surrounded by people who are working their asses off and not seeing any of that.
And that's my point. Is like, what I hate to give raises, because if you're making, let's say, $9 an hour, right, and I give you a raise, for me, $1 an hour is a big jump, right? That's what does that work out to? Like a third, 10% raise, right? $1 an hour on $9 an hour is like a little bit above a 10% raise, which is, I mean, most people get a 3% raise, right?
Yeah.
But you can't speak like that when you're talking about $9 an hour. So I give you $1, that's a 10% raise. I just raised my labor cost 10%, which is an enormous number from the house, from our standpoint. And to the server, they're going to be like, give me $1, you know? Like I work 26 hours a week, that's $30 a week that I just got. Like that's it, you know? It's not worth it. Like I'd rather figure out a different way that's going to be worth
More
it,
rewarding
you know,
for
more
them.
rewarding in the
Yeah.
end. So if you just come with an arbitrary number and then it shows up on your paycheck and it's like $4, you know, what did you do? You just went through all this work and educated all these people like it's some big deal, and then no one cares at the end. So I think you just have to put the work into it. And to get back, I'm not saying that the servers shouldn't get raises, but I'd like
To do
people
it in a
get-
more meaningful way.
Yeah, I'd like raises to be in the forms of like better shifts or more shifts,
Sure.
or
Or
something
priority
like that.
over the shifts.
Yeah.
You get to choose your own
Yeah.
shifts, that sort of thing.
Yes, or the best table sections in whichever way, right? Do you do that?
Sections, maybe, you know, I don't want to close, you know, you can do it, I don't know, whatever. I'd rather that.
You just get to
be the-
reward effort in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should look into this service fee a little bit further into next week, no?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we can definitely spend a ton of time on. So why don't we hit the books and see what we come up with?
Boom.
For sure.
That's what we got for you guys.
So you got to hit that train, and I got to get to the bar. So good talk, guys. See you out there.